Marcus stepped out of his sleek black SUV, the hum of its engine fading as he approached the entrance of the luxury dealership, his polished boots tapping against the concrete. The bright showroom lights reflected off the pristine sports cars inside, their glossy exteriors gleaming like trophies of the wealthy elite. As soon as he stepped in, a few employees cast glances in his direction, some out of curiosity, others with skepticism. Marcus, a tall, well-built black man with a rugged yet confident demeanor, adjusted his designer jacket and walked toward the main display, where a striking red sports car sat front and center. He admired its aerodynamic curves and the precision of its craftsmanship, but before he could get too close, a sneering voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, buddy, you lost or something?" The words came from Todd, a lanky mechanic with grease-stained hands and a permanent smirk of condescension on his face. Marcus turned to face him, unfazed. "Nope, just looking," he said, running his hand over the car's sleek hood. Todd scoffed and crossed his arms, sizing Marcus up from head to toe. "Yeah, sure. Looking, huh? You sure you're in the right place?" he added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Marcus ignored the jab and calmly asked, "What can you tell me about this model?" Todd chuckled and shook his head, leaning against the car like it was his personal property. "Look, man, this ain't a rental lot. You don't just come in here to dream. This baby costs more than what you probably make in a decade." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his lips curving into a slight smirk. "Is that so?" he said, folding his arms. Todd nodded eagerly, enjoying his assumed superiority. "Oh, yeah. You see, we don't waste our time on window shoppers. You might want to check out a used lot down the street, might find something in your price range." A few other employees shifted uncomfortably, clearly recognizing the tension in the air, but none of them spoke up. Marcus exhaled slowly, glancing around the dealership, his gaze flickering over the luxury cars, the high-end furniture, and the pretentious atmosphere. He had dealt with people like Todd before. Men who saw skin color before success, who assumed wealth only came in certain packages. He wasn't angry. He was amused. "That's so," Marcus said again, tilting his head slightly. "You always treat customers like this?" Todd snorted. "Customers? Buddy, I can tell who's serious and who's wasting time. And you?" He gestured at Marcus with an exaggerated shrug. "You're wasting my time." Marcus let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "Well, I guess I'll just have to prove you wrong." Todd rolled his eyes, waving him off dismissively. Sure. Let me guess, you're gonna tell me you're a rapper or a football player or something," he said mockingly. Marcus didn't take the bait. He simply studied Todd for a moment before responding. "No, just a man who knows what he wants." He turned his attention back to the sports car, admiring it once more. "And I think I want this one." Todd erupted into laughter, slapping the side of the car. "Oh, this is rich. You want this one? Man, you wouldn't even qualify for financing." The way he said it, like Marcus couldn't possibly have money, made the other employees even more uncomfortable. A few whispered among themselves, unsure of how this was going to end. One of the salesmen, a young guy named Eric, hesitated before stepping forward. Sir, if you're interested, I can," but Todd cut him off with a raised hand. Nah, let him have his little moment," Todd said, smirking. "Let's see how this plays out." Marcus nodded, tucking his hands into his pockets. "Yeah, let's see." Todd leaned against the car with an exaggerated sigh, shaking his head like he was dealing with a clueless child. "Look, man, I don't know what kind of fantasy you're living in, but this isn't a game," he scoffed. "This car isn't for guys like you. You'd probably scratch it just by breathing too close." A few employees winced at the remark, but Todd didn't care. He was enjoying himself too much. Marcus remained calm, his expression unreadable as he studied the mechanic. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" Todd smirked. "Oh, come on. You know what I mean." He gestured at Marcus's rugged jeans and leather jacket, deliberately eyeing him up and down. "You walk in here dressed like that, looking like you just stepped out of a construction site or a back alley hustle, and expect me to believe you can afford a car that costs more than most people's houses?" Marcus tilted his head, unfazed. So, let me get this straight, he said slowly. You're saying that because of how I look, I can't afford this car? Todd shrugged with fake innocence. Hey, I'm just calling it like I see it. You probably pulled up in some beat-up old truck, thinking you could impress us by pretending to be rich. Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. Interesting theory. Todd folded his arms and grinned. It's not a theory, it's common sense. Guys like you don't drive cars like this. You probably take the bus or, ride a bike. His voice dripped with mockery as he laughed. A few employees shifted awkwardly, but no one spoke up, clearly afraid of drawing Todd's attention. Marcus exhaled, glancing around the showroom. You ever consider that you might be wrong? Todd laughed louder. Yeah, right. Let me guess, you're some kind of secret millionaire? Maybe you won the lottery? Oh wait, let me guess. You're gonna say you own a record label or play for the NBA, huh? His eyes gleamed with amusement as he shook his head. Man, please. You ain't fooling nobody. Marcus remained composed, his face giving nothing away. You sure do talk a lot, he noted. Todd smirked. Yeah, well, I just hate seeing people waste their time. I mean, seriously, what do you even do for a living? You work at a warehouse? Drive a delivery truck? Or maybe you run some little barber shop in the hood? His laughter echoed through the showroom, but Marcus still didn't react. The other employees were now clearly uncomfortable, glancing at each other but saying nothing. One of them, a young sales associate named Eric, stepped forward hesitantly. Todd, maybe we should— Nah, let him talk, Marcus interrupted smoothly, his eyes locked on Todd. I want to hear everything he has to say. Todd smirked, mistaking Marcus's calmness for submission. Oh, I got plenty more to say. Like how guys like you walk in here pretending to be something you're not. Thinking that flashing some attitude is gonna make people take you seriously. Newsflash, buddy, it doesn't. Marcus nodded slowly. So, because I'm not dressed the way you expect, I must be broke? Because I don't fit your little image, I shouldn't even be in here. Todd grinned. Bingo. Now you're getting it. Look, man, I'm just trying to save you some embarrassment. There's a used car lot down the street that might be more your speed. Maybe you can get a nice old Honda or something. Marcus let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. You're really enjoying this, huh? Todd grinned wider. Oh yeah. I mean, come on, this is hilarious. You seriously thought you could walk in here and pretend to be a big shot? Marcus looked him dead in the eye. And what happens if I prove you wrong? Todd rolled his eyes. Please. If you could afford this car, I'd eat my own damn shoes. Marcus smirked, slipping his hands into his pockets. That's so. Todd waved him off. Man, you ain't proving nothing. Just do yourself a favor and leave before you embarrass yourself any more than you already have. The entire showroom was silent now, every employee watching the exchange with bated breath. The tension was thick, but Marcus remained unbothered. He let a few seconds pass before speaking again, his voice calm but firm. You sure about that? Todd scoffed. Positive. Marcus exhaled, then smiled slightly. All right then. Let's see just how sure you are. Todd continued smirking, arms crossed like he had already won some kind of game. All right, big man, you've had your fun. Now, why don't you go ahead and— Before he could finish, Marcus casually reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. He flipped it open with a single hand, revealing neatly stacked bundles of crisp $100 bills. The sight of the cash made the entire showroom fall silent. Todd's smirk faltered for the first time as Marcus took his time counting through the stacks, his fingers effortlessly flicking through the bills as if it were just pocket change. You were saying? Marcus asked, his tone calm and unwavering. Todd blinked rapidly, his eyes darting between the money and Marcus's unreadable expression. Wait, hold up, what is this supposed to prove? He stammered, though his voice had lost some of its previous arrogance. Marcus let out a low chuckle and casually flipped another stack onto the sports car's hood. It means I can buy this car. Right now. No financing. No loans. Just cash. The other employees stared in shock, some whispering among themselves, while others looked at Todd, waiting to see how he would respond. The dealership manager, Dave, who had been quietly observing from his office, suddenly rushed forward, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor. "Sir," Dave said, his voice shifting into customer service mode in an instant. "I apologize for any misunderstanding. Of course, we'd be more than happy to assist you with your purchase." Todd, now visibly sweating, forced a nervous chuckle. "Hey man, I was just messing with you. No hard feelings, right?" Marcus didn't even look at him. He kept his gaze on Dave. "I want this car. But now, I have a bigger question." Dave nodded eagerly. "Of course, sir. Anything you need." Marcus smirked slightly, slipping his hands into his pockets. "How much for the dealership?" The room fell into stunned silence. A few employees gasped audibly, while Todd's mouth fell open in pure disbelief. Dave looked like he had misheard. "Excuse me." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I said, how much to buy the whole dealership?" Todd let out a nervous laugh, shaking his head. "Okay, now I know you're messing around." Marcus didn't acknowledge him. He simply pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah," he said smoothly into the receiver, "get my financial team on the line. I need an immediate valuation on a business acquisition." Todd's smirk vanished completely, replaced with a look of panic. "Wait. Hold on, man, you're serious?" Marcus ignored him, still speaking into the phone. "No, I'm standing in the showroom right now. Yeah, they got a few nice models in here. No, not just the cars, the whole damn business." Dave cleared his throat, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "Sir, I don't think—" "I do," Marcus interrupted, glancing at him. "And I think you should be telling me a number." Dave hesitated, knowing the owner of the dealership would never turn down a lucrative deal. I'd have to make a call." "Go ahead," Marcus said, gesturing for him to step away. "I'll wait." Todd, now completely pale, looked around, as if hoping someone would tell him this was a prank. "Man, come on. You don't really expect us to believe." Marcus turned his full attention to Todd for the first time in the conversation. "You made a lot of assumptions today," he said, his voice low but firm. "You assumed I was broke. You assumed I didn't belong here. And now, you're assuming I won't buy this place just to prove a point." Todd swallowed hard, suddenly unsure of what to say. Marcus held his gaze for a few long seconds before turning back to Dave. "Get me that number." Dave, realizing this was real, hurried off to make the call. The showroom remained dead silent, all eyes on Marcus as he stood calmly by the car, waiting. Dave rushed into his office, fumbling with his phone as he dialed the number for the dealership's owner, his hands slightly trembling. Meanwhile, back on the showroom floor, the tension was so thick it felt like the air itself had turned solid. Marcus stood calmly beside the sports car, his fingers tapping idly against the hood as he waited. Todd, who had spent the last 10 minutes belittling him, now looked like he wanted to disappear. A few employees whispered amongst themselves, stealing nervous glances at Marcus, who seemed completely unbothered. The reality of the situation was starting to set in. This man wasn't bluffing. He wasn't here for games. He had the money, and more importantly, he had the power to do exactly what he had just claimed. Todd cleared his throat, trying to regain some of his usual cockiness. "Look, man, maybe we got off on the wrong foot," he said, forcing a laugh that came out awkward and strained. "I was just joking around, you know? Just some friendly ribbing." Marcus didn't even look at him. His focus remained on the showroom, his expression unreadable. Todd's nervous chuckle faded when he realized Marcus wasn't responding. The silence stretched out, making Todd shift uncomfortably. "Come on, man," he tried again. "I didn't mean anything by it. We mess with customers all the time." Marcus finally turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto Todd's with an intensity that made the mechanic step back. "Do you?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut through steel. "Or do you just mess with customers who look like me?" Todd swallowed hard, realizing there was no way to talk his way out of this. Look, it was just a misunderstanding." Marcus let out a slow breath and shook his head. "No," he said. "It wasn't." Before Todd could respond, Dave came hurrying back, his face slightly flushed. "Sir," he said, addressing Marcus with a completely different tone than before. "I just got off the phone with the owner, and, well, he's open to discussing a sale." Todd's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" he sputtered, looking between Dave and Marcus. "This is actually happening?" Marcus simply smirked and pulled out his phone again, dialing a number. "Yeah, I need my financial team to review a potential acquisition." "A dealership?" "Yes, today." "No, I'm standing inside it right now." He paused, listening to the voice on the other end. "Good. Send over the paperwork." Todd looked like he was going to be sick. This is insane. Who just walks into a place and buys a whole damn dealership? Marcus glanced at him. "A man who doesn't like being disrespected," he said simply. The employees in the showroom were frozen, watching the scene unfold like it was something out of a movie. Some of them exchanged glances, excitement flickering in their eyes. Todd had been a problem at the dealership for years, rude, arrogant, and openly dismissive of customers who didn't fit his idea of real buyers. The idea that he was finally getting what he deserved made some of them want to cheer. Dave wiped his forehead, his voice shaking slightly. "The owner is willing to meet in person to finalize numbers. He said he can be here within the hour." Marcus nodded. "Perfect." He turned to Todd, who was still standing there in stunned silence. "You might want to start packing up your things." Todd let out a nervous laugh, though there was no humor in it. "What? Wait. Hold on, you can't just—" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Can't what? Buy this place? Fire you." He smirked. "You sure about that?" Todd opened his mouth, then closed it again, realizing he had no argument. Marcus turned his attention back to the employees. "How long has he worked here?" he asked, directing the question to Eric, the younger salesman who had tried to intervene earlier. Eric hesitated before responding. About 8 years. And in those 8 years," Marcus continued, "how many customers has he treated the way he treated me today?" Eric bit his lip before answering. "Too many to count." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Todd's face turned red. "Oh, come on, man. You can't just walk in here and fire me." Marcus gave him a long, unimpressed look. "I can if I own the place." Dave, clearly seeing where this was going, sighed and rubbed his temples. "Marcus, I mean, sir, if this deal actually goes through, then yes, you'd have the right to do whatever you want with the staff." Marcus smirked. "Good to know." Todd looked around, his panic growing. "Dave, you can't seriously be okay with this." Dave let out a dry chuckle. "Todd, you do realize that if he buys this place, you're technically his employee, right?" Todd's jaw dropped, and for the first time, he was completely speechless. Marcus turned to the other employees, his expression neutral. "Anyone else here have a problem with treating customers with respect?" Silence. Then, one by one, the employees shook their heads. "Good," Marcus said, "because things are about to change around here." Todd, still reeling, pointed a shaky finger at Marcus. This isn't over." Marcus chuckled. "Oh, it is. You just don't know it yet." A few minutes later, the owner arrived, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who instantly recognized Marcus. "Marcus," he greeted, his tone friendly. "Didn't expect to see you here. What's this I hear about you wanting to buy my dealership?" Marcus shook his hand firmly. "Let's talk numbers." The two men moved into Dave's office, leaving Todd standing in the middle of the showroom like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. The other employees exchanged glances, some of them smiling behind their hands. Eric, the young salesman, smirked as he walked past Todd. "Guess you should have been a little nicer, huh?" Todd didn't respond. He simply stared at the office door, his mind racing as reality set in. This was really happening. He had spent years treating customers like garbage, never imagining there would be consequences. But now, he had just insulted the wrong man. And that mistake was going to cost him everything. Inside Dave's office, Marcus leaned back in the leather chair, his hands clasped together as he listened to the dealership owner, Mr. Langston, go over the details of the sale. The older man looked both intrigued and amused, his eyes studying Marcus with genuine curiosity. "I have to say," Langston admitted, "I wasn't expecting to get an offer on this place today. But from what Dave told me, it seems like you're serious." Marcus smirked slightly. "I don't waste time." Langston nodded, flipping through the financial documents on his desk. "The valuation of this dealership is around $8 million. We'd have to go through legal processes, but if you're prepared to put down a significant amount up front, we could expedite things." Marcus pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Wire $5 million to the account I'm sending you now," he said simply. Langston's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but Marcus didn't even blink. He sent over the account details and hung up. "The money will hit your account within the hour," Marcus said, his tone casual. Langston chuckled, shaking his head. "I like you," he admitted. "You don't play around." "I don't," Marcus agreed. "And neither should the people who work here. I'm sure you've heard what happened on the showroom floor today." Langston sighed, rubbing his temples. "Yeah. Todd's been a problem for years. He's good with cars, but his attitude? Terrible. He thinks he knows everything and has no problem running his mouth, even when it costs us business. I've been meaning to let him go, but he's been here for so long that I—" "That's the problem," Marcus interrupted. "You let him get away with it. You allowed him to create an environment where people like him think they can judge who deserves to be here and who doesn't." He shook his head. "That ends today." Langston studied Marcus for a long moment, then smiled. "You remind me of myself when I was younger. No nonsense, no patience for excuses." He leaned back in his chair. "All right. You really want this dealership?" "I don't make offers I don't intend to follow through on," Marcus replied. Langston let out a breath and nodded. "Then it's yours. As soon as the money clears, I'll have my lawyers finalize the paperwork. By this time tomorrow, this entire place will be under your name." Marcus nodded in satisfaction. "Good." As they wrapped up the discussion, Marcus stood and extended his hand. Langston shook it firmly, his respect for the younger man evident in his grip. "You're going to shake things up around here," Langston said with a chuckle. "That's the plan," Marcus replied smoothly before walking out of the office. Back in the showroom, all eyes were on him the moment he stepped out. Employees whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what was happening. Todd, still standing near the sports car, looked like he wanted to bolt but couldn't bring himself to move. Marcus walked past him without a glance and turned to Dave. "Gather the employees. Right now." Dave, who had never seen such authority from a customer before, nodded immediately and started rounding everyone up. Within minutes, every employee was standing in a semicircle near the center of the showroom. Some looked nervous, others intrigued. Todd was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Marcus crossed his arms and let his gaze sweep over the group. "I know a lot of you are wondering what's going on," he said. "So let me make this simple. As of tomorrow, I'll own this dealership." A murmur spread through the employees. Some looked excited, while others exchanged uncertain glances. "That means things are going to change," Marcus continued. "First of all, the culture in this place. It's getting a complete overhaul. The days of treating people like garbage because of how they look or dress. Over. Anyone who thinks they can disrespect customers and still keep their job, you're free to leave now." Silence. No one moved. Marcus nodded. "Good. Now let's talk about leadership. He turned to Dave. You're the manager, right? Dave straightened. Yes, sir. How long have you worked here? 15 years, Dave answered. Marcus nodded. You've seen a lot, I'm sure. Dave hesitated before answering. Yes, and I'll be honest, I haven't always agreed with the way things were run. But I didn't have the power to change anything. You do now, Marcus said. I need people in leadership who actually want to make this place better. If you're willing to step up, I'll keep you as manager. Dave looked stunned for a moment, then nodded quickly. I'd be honored. Marcus then turned his gaze to Todd, who looked like he wanted to disappear. And as for you, Todd stiffened. You're fired, Marcus said simply. A few employees gasped. Others exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Todd sputtered. What? You can't. I can, Marcus interrupted. And I just did. Todd's face turned beet red. This is ridiculous. You can't just come in here and get rid of me. Marcus tilted his head. You mean the same way you tried to get rid of me when I walked in here? The same way you treated me like trash because you assumed I didn't belong. Todd opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Marcus smiled coldly. Pack your things. Now. For the first time in his life, Todd had nothing to say. His arrogance, his insults, none of it mattered anymore. With shaking hands, he turned and stormed toward the back, disappearing into the employee area. Marcus turned back to the rest of the employees. Anyone else have a problem with what just happened? Silence. Good, he said. Because this is only the beginning. Starting tomorrow, this dealership is going to be known for something different. We're not going to judge people by their appearance. We're going to treat everyone with respect. And if anyone has a problem with that, you can leave now. No one moved. Marcus smirked. Looks like I've got a solid team, then. The employees slowly started to relax, and some even looked excited. Marcus could see it in their faces. They had been waiting for something like this. Dave stepped forward. Sir, if I may ask, why buy a dealership? You don't seem like the type who needs the money. Marcus chuckled. I don't. He looked around the showroom. I did this because I could. Because sometimes, people need to be reminded that judging others based on appearances is a mistake. And because I wanted to prove a point. Eric, the young salesman, grinned. I think you proved it pretty damn well. Marcus smirked. Yeah, I think so too. As the employees slowly started dispersing, the energy in the room had completely shifted. The toxic atmosphere that Todd had helped create was gone, replaced by something better. Something stronger. And as Marcus walked toward the exit, he glanced back at the showroom one last time, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Today, he hadn't just bought a car. He had bought respect. And more importantly, he had made sure no one like Todd would ever have the power to look down on anyone ever again. The next morning, the dealership buzzed with an energy it had never felt before. Employees arrived early, whispering about the massive shift that had happened overnight. Some still couldn't believe that the man they had watched Todd humiliate was now their new boss. Others, particularly those who had been frustrated with the dealership's toxic culture for years, felt a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus arrived promptly at 8 a.m., stepping out of a sleek, jet-black luxury sedan. Dressed in a tailored suit, his presence commanded respect the moment he walked through the glass doors. Dave, now officially staying on as manager, was already waiting with a folder in hand. Good morning, sir, he greeted. Morning, Marcus replied, taking the folder and flipping through it. Give me a rundown of the key employees. Who are my top performers? Dave nodded. Well, Eric, the young guy who stepped in yesterday, is one of our best salesmen. He's got drive, and customers like him. Our service department is solid, but they were afraid to speak up against Todd. And then we have some newer hires who have potential, but they haven't had the chance to prove themselves yet. Marcus nodded, absorbing the information. Good. Let's give them that chance. By 9 a.m., Marcus had gathered every employee for a formal meeting in the showroom. As they stood in a loose circle, a mix of nervousness and anticipation filled the air. "Let's get one thing straight," Marcus began, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. "I didn't buy this dealership to watch it run the same way it has for years. Things are changing, starting now." He let that sink in for a moment before continuing. "From today forward, we're running on one principle: respect. Respect for customers, respect for each other, and respect for the work we do. If you can't handle that, leave now." He paused, scanning the faces around him. Not a single person moved. "Good," he said. "That means we can build something worth being proud of." Eric, standing near the front, spoke up. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why did you buy this place? You could own anything. Why a dealership?" Marcus smirked. "Because people like Todd need to be reminded that judging others based on appearances is a mistake. And because I like proving people wrong." His gaze swept over the group. "But more than that, I want to turn this place into something better. A business that thrives not just because we sell cars, but because people actually want to buy from us." The employees exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement. "Which brings me to my next point," Marcus continued. "We're restructuring the way this place operates. Promotions will be based on merit, not favoritism. If you do your job well, you'll be rewarded. If you don't, you'll be replaced." He looked over at Dave. "That starts today. Effective immediately, Eric is getting a promotion." Eric's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Marcus nodded. "You had the courage to stand up yesterday when it wasn't easy. That's the kind of leadership I want in this place. From now on, you're the assistant sales manager." A few employees clapped, and Eric, still in shock, grinned. I don't even know what to say." "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Marcus said. "Earn it." Eric nodded, standing taller. Marcus turned back to the rest of the employees. "As for the rest of you, prove to me that you belong here. Do your job with integrity, and you'll have my full support. But if anyone thinks they can keep doing things the old way, they won't last long." Another pause. Then, slowly, the employees started to nod, some even smiling. Marcus could see it. The shift was already happening. By noon, business was running smoother than ever. Customers who had once felt uncomfortable in the dealership were now greeted with genuine enthusiasm. The toxic energy Todd had spread was gone, replaced with a sense of professionalism and pride. Employees worked harder, motivated by the fresh start. By 3 p.m., Marcus was in his new office, going over sales reports when Dave walked in, looking almost giddy. "Sir, you might want to come see this." Marcus raised an eyebrow but followed him out to the showroom. What he saw made him grin. A line of customers. Not just one or two, a line. Word had spread fast. People who had heard about what happened were showing up, eager to support the dealership's new owner. Some were long-time customers who had stopped coming because of Todd and his attitude. Others were just curious, wanting to see if the rumors were true. "This is insane," Eric whispered. "I've never seen this place this packed before." Marcus crossed his arms, watching the employees hustle to keep up with the sudden influx of customers. "It's not insane," he said. "It's what happens when you treat people right." The first customer in line, a middle-aged man in a crisp blue suit, stepped forward. He extended his hand to Marcus. "I don't normally buy from dealerships like this," he admitted. "But after hearing what you did, I want to buy from you." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "Then let's find you the perfect car." By the end of the day, the dealership had shattered its previous sales records. Not just because of Marcus's money, but because of the shift in culture. Employees worked harder, customers felt valued, and the dealership had transformed almost overnight. Todd, meanwhile, was long gone. After storming out the day before, he had tried to plead his case to former colleagues, but no one wanted to hear it. His reputation was ruined, and word spread quickly that he had been blacklisted from several other dealerships in town. As Marcus sat in his office that evening, watching the final sales of the day wrap up, Dave knocked on the door. "Mind if I come in?" Marcus gestured for him to enter. Dave sat down, shaking his head with a chuckle. "I've been in this business a long time," he said. "But I've never seen anything like this. You didn't just buy a dealership, you changed it. And you changed people's lives in the process." Marcus leaned back, a satisfied smirk on his face. "That was the goal." Dave nodded, then hesitated. "So, what now? What's next for you?" Marcus considered the question for a moment before answering. "Now, we make this place the best damn dealership in the state. And then," he smirked, "maybe I'll buy another one." Dave chuckled. "Something tells me this is just the beginning for you." Marcus simply smiled. Because he knew, this was just the beginning. He hadn't just bought a dealership. He had built a legacy. One that would stand as a reminder to anyone who ever doubted him. And as long as he was in charge, no one would ever be judged by their appearance in his business again. The end.